My son, keep your father's commandments, and do not forsake the Torah of your mother. Bind them to your heart forever, tie them around your neck.
Today's message is entitled Simplify. Are you a slave? Does something or someone or some mindset control your life? Those things, those people, or that mindset is your master. What part of this world can you not live without? And how can we minimize those areas of our lives where Satan has enslaved us? And even beyond minimalizing, how can we eliminate those areas where we've become a slave? Secondly, in this complex society, what would a simple life look like? So we'll example the concept of simple also. Now, this is the overall focus of the study. And we're going to start with the first question, are you a slave? Now, I want to start with a couple of examples that are easily verified. I mean, anybody can research into these and find out that what I'm saying is true. Okay? We have grown up in a world that both pushes and condemns addiction and control. Addiction on both sides of the fence is big business. Most of the businesses that supply the addictions and have purposely designed those products to be addicting have had massive advertising campaigns to promote their product. Those same companies invest heavily in the treatment of addiction. For instance, alcohol's big business. We have AA. Drugs, you have NA. Gambling, you have Gamblers Anonymous. In fact, it's even funny that you go to a casino or anything around one, and it says, if you have a gambling problem, call this number. Really? If you didn't have the gambling problem, you wouldn't walk through the front door. So, again, it's a horrible business. Ironically, again, they also have massive advertising campaigns to promote the treatment. Not only do they advertise their product, but they advertise their treatment of it. Now, I'm going to use the food industry as another example. Much of our food has had many of the nutrients removed. Then the remaining food is packaged and sold as groceries. Those nutrients are then packaged up and sold as nutritional supplements. Between the parent companies and their subsidiaries, they're getting twice the income from one product. These same food companies are also invested heavily in the pharmaceutical industry. To sell their prepackaged food, many chemicals and processes are used that make the consumer unhealthy. So the pharmaceutical industry produces drugs to deal with the symptoms. It's a huge scam. And a lot of people, a lot of companies are making a huge profit. And there are a lot of other industries that are directly or indirectly involved as well, such as advertising, healthcare, doctors, hospitals, clinics, care facilities, etc., to name a few. It's all a big scam. This is also why home gardening, organic fruits, vegetables, and farm-raised meats, eggs, and milk products are a much healthier alternative. However, there is a campaign on to eliminate our access to these foods, forcing us to rely on the food companies and all the rest of the attached companies. I'll kind of give you a couple of small examples. There's a massive campaign to limit our access to any seeds to grow your own food. Another thing, and this is a big thing in Kansas, we grow a lot of wheat. But if you take your wheat that you just grew that year and save some aside to use for seed wheat the next spring, they can throw you in prison. Because that wheat does not belong to you. It is actually a product that is not copyrighted, that would be with book, but patented, yes, thank you. It is patented, and you're not allowed to use it because you're stealing another person's product to use for your seed. The laws are being drawn up in that way. How about GMO? You get seeds, what seeds you can get. How many of them are heirloom seeds? How many of them are hybrids? Now, a hybrid, even though it may be just cross-pollination between two separate tomato plants that produces a third type of tomato, and they do that a lot of times because of disease resistance, bug resistance, drought resistance, just different issues that they're trying to compensate for. But then you have the genetically modified organisms. For instance, used to be, whenever, that long time ago, you could go and you could ask a farmer if you could go out into his cornfield and pick a few ears of corn for you and your family. Sure, go ahead. It's field corn, but you're welcome to it. Field corn isn't quite so plump and juicy as what sweet corn is. It's not quite as sweet, but it's still corn, still good. When you roast that ear, it's delicious. Now you don't dare do that. You don't dare do that in Kansas. Monsanto Company has made a version of corn that is Roundup resistant. Okay, so they take a corn plant and you take Roundup, which is a herbicide that kills plants straight across the board. But you start growing these plants and give them just minuscule amounts of this. And then every generation after that of the plant that you grow, you increase that a little bit more and a little bit more until you reach the point where when that farmer sprays his cornfield and sprays it with Monsanto, there's enough of the Monsanto already into the genetic corn that it will not kill the corn crop. Kills all the weeds, but not the corn. Okay? But if that Monsanto, Roundup if you will, is in the corn, what's it going to do to your body if you eat that corn? That's why I say, where can we do any of this stuff? Why is it that they talk about, well, we're going to spray our ditches with herbicide? Okay, we're going to control the weeds, except it doesn't control the weeds. The weeds still keep coming back. They have all these herbicides for bindweed, and I'm speaking in Kansas, but we have stuff for bindweed for all these other plants. And the plants are still thriving. So why would they do that if they know it's not working? Because the plants that they talk about trying to eradicate, amazingly, are medicinal plants that if we knew about them and used them, we would actually be healthy. We wouldn't have to go to the doctors. Even things like thistle plant. Thistle is medicinal. Bindweed is medicinal. Things like lamb's quarter. Okay, lamb's quarter is very high in nutrients. Dandelion, very high in nutrients. And yet they want to get rid of it. And they want to push their product. Here, that's unsafe to eat. Well, it is now that you've sprayed it. But that's unsafe to eat. You need to eat our product. It's safe. They don't tell you that it doesn't have any nutrients. They just tell you it's safe. So, again, it's a huge scam. And I thoroughly encourage anyone to have your own garden, even if it's like I heard earlier today, square foot gardening. Yeah, it's amazing If you had a 12-inch by 12-inch piece of dirt, how much you can grow in that. There was a book written years ago called Square Foot Gardening. And they actually talk about how you do, like, you can plant it directly in the ground, or you can have a raised bed. You do 4 foot by whatever length you want. Why 4 foot? Because most people can reach 2 foot. And so you can be on either side of that frame, and you can reach to the middle of the garden. And it's amazing, if you put some planting and what have you, how much you can grow in how little of a space. I heard a deal this has been probably 5-6 years ago. This individual bought a little farm, just a postage stamp size farm, only had like 4 acres. It wasn't very big, okay? And he determined the very first year that he was going to plant a garden. So he went out there and he planted himself a garden. He brought in all kinds of manure and hay and just different stuff to amend the soil. He had a really good garden. And he decided, I think I'm going to go ahead and sell some of my produce. So the first year, he actually made about $13,000. Okay. And that was just on the garden. Well, he was so impressed that he turned around and expanded it. He went to about half of his property. Now, this is the gentleman that went to the bank and got a loan to buy this property. The second year, he paid it off because he made almost $60,000 off of just a couple of acres. And he fed his family. The last I heard, now not only has he expanded where even his front yard is now pretty much a garden, but he actually has other land. He grows his own sheep and goats and chickens and cattle. So, and from what I understand, the third year, this same individual started hiring employees. So, I mean, it's possible. How much food can one person grow? Well, a lot of it's going to be depending on how much can you take care of. Some of you well know it. That a garden takes a lot of work. Keeping the bugs, keeping the animals out of it, keeping disease, watching for disease, everything. It's all there. What are the fruits of that? You have food that's healthy for you. So what's the point of these examples that I've mentioned? What point am I trying to make? Only that we need to question the system, we need to question its motives, and question its controls. A number of years ago, I was working for a corporation, and I asked them a question. The director of that corporation, I asked her, I said, who owns this company? She said, I really don't know. And she was just a director. She was a hired employee, hired to run the company. Okay? So we knew she wasn't the owner. And she answered to a board because it was a corporation. The board doesn't have any vested interest in the company. So who owns the company? Whoever owns the land? Well, who owns the land? It's a corporation. The more I dug, the more evasive the answer seemed to become, until I realized who actually runs the company, who owns the corporation. Satan. Satan does. Why is it that we see so many corporations, even today, why are their agendas the way they are? Why do they seem so satanic? And some of them are even worse. Look at the Disney Corporation. I mean, it's been evil since basically its beginning. For a while, it had animal programs that showed wildlife and stuff, and those were awesome. Anymore, I don't know that they've even put out for 30 to 50 years anything that isn't demonic. that isn't directly connected to witchcraft. You see all the evil. I noticed on TV last night, there was an advertisement for this Halloween special that they were bringing. And it was everything from the mildly demonic to the wildly demonic. And that's Disney. We grew up trusting Disney. But all the way up the chain of command in the corporate world, all the way up to the company owner, the CEO, and the boardroom, everyone answers to someone. And again, like I mentioned, quite often this chain of command even goes further into the demonic. This demonic command, however, has an agenda, and wealth, authority, and fear are just tools used to control humans. And this is exactly what we see from the corporate world. Now again, the subject of this study has been to simplify our lives. To simplify. So before we actually go into it very far, I want to examine the word simple. What is it? Is simple good or is it bad? Or is it both? Or can it be either? Let's turn first of all to Proverbs chapter 1 and verse 4. Proverbs chapter 1 verse 4. It says, to give prudence to the simple, to the young man, knowledge and discretion. Now, we're going to read this just in moments, but because I'm breaking into this thought to do this, but literally, what does it talk to give prudence to the simple? To give prudence to the simple, the purpose is to impart discernment to the naive and the ignorant. The word simple has to do with naive. Okay? The root of simple is a word that means an open door. It's an apt description of the undiscerning who do not know what to keep in or out of their minds or their lives. The latter part of that, where it says to the young man, knowledge and discretion. And that's to make a person think about the effects and repercussions involved in the decisions they make. Not only those repercussions and effects on themselves, but also on others. Hopefully thereby, by taking all that into consideration, to make appropriate and responsible choices. We need to simplify our lives, but we don't need to be foolish. Now, the previous examples were given so you can see that there are people and entities that profit from our ignorance and our innocence. To them, we're just a source of revenue, and they don't care about the effects on our lives. So now I'm wanting to, I've got 4 different areas we're going to cover. None of these are really long, but I want to just quickly go through these. Let's start with, again, we're at Proverbs 1, but let's read verses 1 through 7. Now it says the Proverbs of Solomon, the son of David, the king of Israel. I appreciate the fact that the scripture readings come from the book of Proverbs. There's so much that we need to hear year after year, day after day, month after month. We need that. But what is the reason for a proverb? Verse 2, to know wisdom and instruction, to perceive the words of understanding, to receive the instruction of wisdom, justice, judgment, and equity, to give prudence to the simple, to the young man knowledge and discretion. A wise man will hear and increase learning, and a man of understanding will attain wise counsel. To understand a proverb and an enigma, the words of the wise and their riddles. fear of Yahweh is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. Verses 1 through 7. So when we read through the book of Proverbs, and I love to do it occasionally, again, I really appreciate this assembly that incorporates that into their Sabbath reading. Let's go to Proverbs chapter 9, verses 1 through 12. Proverbs 9, verses 1 through 12. Wisdom has built her house. She has hewn out her 7 pillars. She has slaughtered her meat. She has mixed her wine. She has also furnished her table. She has sent out her maidens. She cries out from the highest places of the city. Whoever is simple, let him turn in here. Whoever is an open door, let him come in so that we can train him and teach him. As for him who lacks understanding, she says to him, come, eat of my bread, and drink of the wine I've mixed. Forsake foolishness and live, and go in the way of understanding. He who corrects a scoffer gets shame for himself, and he who rebukes a wicked man only harms himself. Do not correct a scoffer lest he hates you. Rebuke a wise man, and he will love you. Give instruction to a wise man, and he will still be wiser. He will be still wiser. Teach a just man, and he will increase in learning. As it repeats it here in verse 10, it says, the fear of Yahweh is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. For by me your days will be multiplied, and years of life will be added to you. If you are wise for yourself. And if you scoff, you will bear it alone. It's interesting. It says, if you're wise for yourself. And if you scoff, you bear it alone. It's not one of the verses in here, but in the New Testament it says that the wisdom of the wise is foolishness to God. Okay? We have all of these people that sit up there, they're scientists, they're highly renowned and respected people, they're all this, they're authorities in their subject. And how often does God make them look like fools when they have to say, oh, well, maybe we need to understand this because we just found this and it goes against what we teach and believe and understand. Maybe you don't believe and understand correctly. Okay? Wisdom calls out to us, beckoning us to come in, learn, grow, change. And I myself would advocate, please, study the book of Proverbs. Yes, it's all tiny little tidbits. But when you start putting things together, it makes a much better picture. Let's go to 1 Corinthians 13. 1 Corinthians 13, verse 11. Again, I'm kind of breaking into a thought here to make the point. 1 Corinthians 13, verse 11. The Apostle Paul says, when I was a child, I spoke as a child. I understood as a child. I thought as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. Yes. How can we maintain our innocence and still be the truth? That's ultimately a question that we're going to look at. Okay? Let's go to Matthew 10, verse 16. Matthew 10 and verse 16. We read this earlier in our earlier message. It says, behold, I send you out as sheep in the midst of wolves. Therefore, be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. Wise as a serpent. We have a lot of snakes up in Kansas. We even have some of the more dangerous ones like water moccasins. We've got rattlesnakes, we've got all kinds of stuff. But with very few exceptions, when you see that snake or if you hear a rattlesnake, it's easy. You don't have to get bit. All you got to do is stop. Wait. That snake fears you as much or more than you fear it. And if you allow it the chance to leave, it will leave. Virtually every time. You don't have to be aggressive towards it because that's when it's going to get aggressive to you. A snake wants to avoid confrontation. There are exceptions like the water moccasin and stuff, and most of theirs is curiosity, and it's not like they're coming to bite you, but they're just curious what's splashing around in the water or, fishing at the edge or whatever. You're something new in their environment. And they're coming just to check you out. And if you act aggressive towards it, yes, it will attack you. We have to be wise as serpents, but yet harmless as doves. We need to be aware of what's going on around us and avoid trouble, avoid evil, avoid problems. Go to Proverbs 14. Proverbs 14, verses 15 through 19. The simple believes every word, but the prudent considers well his steps. A wise man fears and departs from evil. Exactly what we just saw with wise as serpent. But a fool rages in his self-confidence. Poke him with a stick. A quick-tempered man acts foolishly, and a man of wicked intentions is hated. The simple inherit folly, foolishness, but the prudent are crowned with knowledge. The evil will bow before the good, and the wicked at the gates of the righteous. Do we do that? Do we think ahead of time, or do we just bull into a situation? Bullying into it isn't necessarily the right answer. Let's go to Proverbs 22, verse 3. Proverbs 22, 3 says, "The prudent man foresees evil and hides himself, but the simple pass on and are punished." Again, Matthew 10:16. Proverbs 27, verse 12. "A prudent man foresees evil and hides himself. The simple pass on and are punished." Almost identical to what we just got done reading. But again, Matthew 10:16. Wise as a serpent, harmless as a dove. Avoid problems if you possibly can. Period. Let me give you a couple examples of avoiding problems. Let's go to Proverbs 9, verses 13 through 18. Proverbs 9, 13 through 18. "A foolish woman is clamorous, boisterous. She is simple and knows nothing, for she sits at the door of her house on a seat by the highest places of the city, to call to those who pass by, who go straight on their way." So she's out there, as the expression goes, hawking, 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 where she is, come in, you see it at state fairs all the time. Come on, play my game. It's the same thing. "Whoever is simple, let him turn in here. And as for him who lacks understanding," she says to him, "stolen water is sweet, and bread eaten in secret is pleasant." But he does not know that the dead are there, that her guests are in the depths of hell. Let's back up to Proverbs 7, verses 6 through 23, because it's the same theme, the very same thought. For at the window of my house I looked through my lattice and saw among the simple those who are an open book. I perceived among the youth a young man devoid of understanding, passing along the street near her corner, and he took the path to her house. In the twilight, in the evening, in the black and dark night, and there a woman met him, with the attire of a harlot and a crafty heart. She was loud and rebellious. Her feet would not stay at home. At times she was outside, at times in the open square, lurking at every corner. So she caught him and kissed him. With an impudent face, she said to him, I have peace offering against you. Today I have paid my vow. So I came out to meet you, diligently to seek your face, and I have found you. I've spread my bed with tapestry, colored coverings of Egyptian linen. I've perfumed my bed with myrrh, aloes, and cinnamon. Come, let us take our fill of love until morning. Let us delight ourselves with love, for my husband is not at home. He's gone on a long journey. He's taken a bag of money with him and will come home on the appointed day. With her enticing speech, she caused him to yield. With her flattering lips, she seduced him. Immediately he went after her as an ox goes to the slaughter, or as a fool to the correction of the stock, until an arrow struck his liver. As a bird hastens to the snare, he did not know that it would cost his life. I would say the lady's husband came home early. But if he would have had any wisdom at all, he would have avoided this situation. And it doesn't matter whether we're talking men or women. Promiscuity is not a good thing. Let's go to Luke 3. A little bit different subject, but still wisdom is talking. Luke chapter 3, verse 14. Now, John was talking to the people, and soldiers, tax collectors, verse 12, came to be baptized and said to him, Teacher, what shall we do? And he said, collect no more than what is appointed for you. Likewise, the soldiers asked him, saying, What shall we do? And he said to them, Do not intimidate anyone or accuse falsely, and be content with your wages. Don't get greedy. You have been given a job to do it. You don't have to be greedy. Luke 16, verse 14. So we're talking just a few chapters over. Luke 16, verse 14. Now the Pharisees, who were lovers of money, heard these things and they derided him. How many people do we have in our world that are lovers of money? Look at the industries that prey on that. Gambling, for one. That love of money. Ooh, man, I've got the chance to win $1 million. Yeah, you do. Or you can nickel and dime yourself until you reach that investment of $1 million and still not have won anything. That greed, that desire for money is a snare. And it's something that we need to avoid. So we've talked about wisdom calling out. Let's go to another thing. Let's go to 2 Corinthians 11, verses 3 and 4. So this is another aspect of simplicity.
Second or first?
2 Corinthians 11, verses 3 and 4. Says, But I fear lest somehow, as the serpent deceived Eve by his craftiness, we just got done hearing about the crafty harlot, as the serpent deceived Eve by his craftiness, so your minds may be corrupted from the simplicity that is in Yahshua. Now, how can you be corrupted from it? Well, let's go back to the crafty harlot. Let's go back even to what Satan did to Eve. It was a sales pitch. We have to be careful of sales pitch. Why? because it is meant to twist our thinking to their way of thought. I've got a product to sell. How many companies actually say, I'm producing this quality product for the society? No. Why is it that it used to be every car commercial had this pretty woman standing by the car sitting on the hood? Why do you have to use sex to sell a car? Is it that crappy of a car?
Yeah.
You know? But when you start watching advertisements, anymore we're inundated with drug commercials advertisements. And they always show these pictures of all these people having a good time and enjoying life and doing all these fun things. And in the background, you keep hearing this, and the side effects may include diarrhea, constipation. Well, I don't want to have them both at the same time, you know. But when you start looking at it, these side effects are worse than the issue you're trying to deal with. And a lot of times, these are superficial issues. One that got me one time was, do you have restless leg syndrome? Yeah, my knee does move every now and then, okay? But it doesn't threaten my life. It may be a minor annoyance, but they played it up as this big thing, and we have the perfect pill for you. I'm sorry, side effects were much worse than my knee getting a little restless. Okay. What we're talking here says that your minds may be corrupted from the simplicity that is in Christ. For if he who comes preaches another Yahshua whom we have not preached, if he gives you a sales pitch that is not of the truth, it says, or if you receive a different spirit which you have not received. How do you know that the spirit that might be moving this individual is from God? Because it might not be. Or a different gospel which you have not accepted. You may very well put up with it. You may listen. You may actually entertain the thought for a while. But does it build you up? Or does it pull you away from Christ? And when we start talking about the simplicity that is in Christ, when you really look at the New Testament, at where it explains about Yahshua, and look in the Old Testament where it talks about different things about him being the coming Messiah, when you put together the entire Bible and look at it, is this something so difficult? The Catholic Church, for instance, says, oh, you don't want to read the Bible because it's very confusing. And if you have any questions, you need to go to your local priest or pastor, minister. Okay? How is that the simplicity of Christ? If you can't understand it, no, we can understand it. This Bible is easy to understand. We do have some difficulties, yes. Translational issues. For them to translate a Bible, even if it's, and I'm going to use the example King James, you may have Thomas Nelson and you may have Tyndale House. Two different companies. Their Bibles are required to be, I think it's at least close to 50% different. They have to change words to meet those copyright criteria. So if a word has numerous meanings, fine, let's just throw in a different meaning. It may make it confusing, who cares? We get to print our Bible. Printing the truth is virtually impossible. That's why even the old King James, where is there a Bible in existence today that doesn't have that same issue? I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm saying that it's not allowed to be sold over the counter. Because to be sold over the counter, it has to be at least 50% approximately different than what everybody else is. So there is simplicity in Scripture. When you have learned the basic principles, it's pretty easy to spot when somebody is sitting there trying to preach to you another Jesus and another gospel. Yeah. You get to wondering, whoa, when are you coming up with that? Can you prove anything you're saying? Go to another one. Simplicity of heart. Let's go to Acts chapter 2, verse 46. Acts 2:46. So continuing daily with one accord in the temple, and this is after the day of Pentecost when all these people were baptized. So continuing daily with one accord in the temple and breaking bread from house to house, they ate their food with gladness and simplicity of heart, praising God and having favor with all the people. And the Lord added to the church daily those who were being saved. There is a simplicity of heart that each of us, if we don't have it, we really need to pray for it and to develop it. Ask God to give it to you. 2 Corinthians 1, verse 12. 2 Corinthians 1, in verse 12. For our boasting is this, the testimony of our conscience that we conducted ourselves in the world in simplicity and godly sincerity, not with fleshly wisdom, but by the grace of God, and even more abundantly for you. That sincerity, that simplicity, being an open book. You know, we started out saying it's like an open book, an open door. Are we willing to selectively be an open door to others? Or are we going to be crafty in our own heart? Are we going to have our own agenda and say, okay, yeah, you're welcome to believe what you want to believe. And I'm not saying that everybody has to agree with everybody. It's not necessarily that way. We're all at different levels of understanding, levels of spiritual growth in our spiritual walk. If I understand something and I can look at you and we're in a discussion and I can tell that you're not quite understanding where I'm coming from, does that mean that I am to criticize you? No, not at all. I can either leave you be, understanding that Yahshua is the one that's guiding you, and that there will come a time when your eyes will be opened, or I can say, okay, well, have you considered this? And present something different. Not that you're forcing, you got to believe me, or we're not going to ever associate with each other. No, it doesn't have to be that way. We can have that simplicity of heart to where we are truly wanting them to understand. And if it means, this is the way I apply it in my own life. If I say something and you don't understand it, question me on it. If I have to explain it again, fine. If I have to explain it a different way, fine. Whatever it takes. If you're right and I'm wrong, fine. I'm okay with that too. Because I leave it in God's hands to teach each and every one of us. And that includes myself. I also daily am learning. Mark chapter 9. Mark chapter 9, verses 33 through 37. Mark 9, verses 33 through 37. And he came to Capernaum, and when he was in the house, he asked them, "What was it you disputed among yourselves on the road?" But they kept silent, for on the road they had disputed among themselves who would be the greatest. And he sat down and called the 12 and said to them, he already knew what they were talking about. He said, called them, sat them down, and said to them, "If anyone desires to be first, he shall be last of all and a servant of all." Then he took a little child and set him in the midst of them. And when he had taken the child in his arms, he said to them, Whoever receives one of these little children in my name receives me. And whoever receives me receives not me, but him who sent me." I love little children. I truly, truly do. Because a lot of times they have some of the most awesome questions. They do. And it's always simple and basic. Why is this? Okay, I'm trying to teach the minutiae of something, and they're wanting to know why. Why did he do it? Why? What's the big reason? How many times do we get wrapped up in that, in the minutiae, and forget the idea that there's a bigger picture? All they're wanting to do is see the big picture. Now, we can sit down and start explaining minutiae, and we've lost them within 2 minutes. Are we willing to stop and say, this is why? That's all they want to know. They'll go on with life. Later they'll come back with a new question. Awesome. That's all they want. They don't want a lecture. They want an answer to one question. How often do we come to Christ the same way? Whoever receives one of these little children in my name receives me. And whoever receives me receives not me, but him who sent me. That little child. Remember when the disciples, there was a little child? Maybe that's the next one I'm going to. Maybe I better look at that first. Mark 10. Yes. This is actually the one I was just now referring to. Mark 10, verses 13 through 16. And they brought little children to him, that he might touch them. So the parents and the crowd were bringing little children so that they could touch him. But the disciples rebuked those who brought them. But when Yahshua saw it, he was greatly displeased and said to them, "Let the little children come to me, and do not forbid them. For of such is the kingdom of God. Assuredly, I say to you, whoever does not receive the kingdom of God as a little child will by no means enter it." And he took them up in his arms, laid his hands on them, and blessed them. How much do we know about the kingdom of God? And how much of what we know is head knowledge and not heart knowledge? How much of us are looking for the kingdom of God with our heart, not our head? Let the little children come to me. Don't forbid them. Don't stop them. When you have people on the street, I've seen times where myself and another person might be having a conversation in Walmart or something. And then somebody else in line behind me asks the question. Awesome. They've overheard my conversation. I've got a question. Awesome. That's an open door. That's a simple question. You just said this why. Okay? That is an awesome time. You don't have to preach everything to them. Give them the answer to their question. Plant that seed. Let that seed grow up a little bit. And somebody else may water it. Somebody else may harvest it. But God is the one that gives the increase. We just have to do our part. Somebody may already have that seed planted. We have a gentleman that just recently in our congregation, he went 28 years wanting to be baptized, and nobody would do it. He went to church after church after church, and nobody would do it. Because they said, oh, well, you've got to join our denomination, or you've got to sign this contract with our local church, or you've got to do this or that again. Really? That's not what he wanted. He wanted a relationship with Christ. I counseled with him for one evening, and was he ready? Absolutely. So the next weekend he was baptized. And it was so awesome that 2 weeks later, his wife got baptized. Because in that 2-week period, she had seen such a change in his life. He wanted some too. The people will come to us as little children and ask questions. Answer. Always give an answer to the hope that lies within you. Always. One last point that I want to make is called simplicity of living. Let's go to 1 Timothy 6. 1 Timothy 6, verses 6 through 10. 1 Timothy 6, verses 6 through 10. Now godliness with contentment is great gain. For we brought nothing into this world, and it is certain that we can carry nothing out. And having food and clothing, with these we shall be content. But those who desire to be rich fall into temptation and a snare, and into many foolish and harmful lusts, which drown men in destruction and perdition. For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil, for which some have strayed from the faith in their greediness, and pierced themselves through with many sorrows. Money is the root of it. Money is not evil of itself. Money is nothing more than a means for barter. If I have a cow and you have 3 chickens, and I want to get eggs from you and you want beef from me, how do we trade? How do I trade my cow for your chicken? It's not an equitable trade. And so you use the barter system to accomplish it. And that's all money is. But there have been people that have elevated money to be above and something almost with a life of its own. Mm-hmm. And they want more and more, and it doesn't matter how much they get, it's not enough. That's where it is the root of all kinds of evil, because we reach a point where we're willing to do anything for it. Now, there is a concept called minimalism. Many of you may have heard of it. Now, minimalism is a movement whereby you simplify your life by keeping just the basics. You eliminate non-essential things from your life. Okay? If you think of like a monk in a monastery, it's the same type idea. They have access to a toilet, they have a roof over their head, they have food to eat. What do they actually own? Very little of anything. Maybe the Bible, maybe. Even then, sometimes that is communal use. I saw a group one time, and I thought it was, I was really impressed with the way they had done it. There was a doctor that owned a sizable chunk of land, and what he had done, he had some very good friends of his that he made caretakers over the land. He was a doctor in Kansas City. I don't even know if the gentleman's still alive any longer. But he lived way over 100 miles from his property, and he didn't want to just sell it. I mean, that's just a matter of getting money for your piece of property. So what they did is they opened it up, and I'm not going to use the word commune directly. I guess I just did. But it wasn't set up as one of these exclusivistic communes like what you think of, like Ruby Ridge and all these others. No. What he did, the friends of his, he made them caretakers. They lived on the land. And what they did is they built, for instance, they built a shower house. Men, women, anyone, it was lockable, so nobody would interfere with you, but that was where they had a hot water heater, to where you wanted hot water, you went to the bathhouse to get it. Okay? They had a
community gardens. Actually, they actually had two of them. They had one for smaller things, and then they had a huge greenhouse. It was open to anybody to use. They had if your car broke down, they had a big shop built that was fully equipped with pretty much all of the tools. You weren't allowed to take them out, but if your car broke down, you could bring your car up there and fix anything that needed fixed. It was open for anybody to use. And every single one of these different outbuildings were exactly that way. If you needed it, it's there. They had farming tools. They had all kinds of stuff, chainsaws. They had everything. Anything you needed. And people would bring their trailer houses and stuff out there and live on the land. If they decided they wanted to go somewhere else, they just hooked up their trailer and left. There was no commitment to it. But they did require that everyone had to have a job. Not every person, but every unit. You couldn't just squat on the land and live there for 10 years living off of everybody else's labor. They expected you to keep your area clean, help with others. And it was working very well. Now, when I actually experienced this, it had actually been going on for at least close to 20 years. And I was totally impressed. They even had a stream running through where people could go fishing if they wanted to. Awesome. Everything was there. I foresee that being a lot of, in the millennial period, of what we're going to see. Doesn't mean that nobody's going to own anything. The New World Order is saying in 2032 that no one will own anything, everyone will be happy. Yeah. Satan likes to imitate everything that God has already established. But God runs it the right way. That's all there is to it. But yes, this minimalism is a deal, and I've seen it, to where some of these people, they showed pictures of different people that were minimalists and what their houses looked like. Most of them only had like a cot on the floor and maybe a bicycle over in the corner that they used to get around. Just a few odd and end things. That was all they owned. I can kind of see that, but I think that might be to an extreme as well. But what do we absolutely have to have? When it says in Acts chapter 2, where they had all things in common, talking about that first century church, what is it talking? Well, some of the people even were selling some of their property and donating it for the church to use to help others out. Where's that much different than what I'm going to use the term commune, I guess, was? All things in common. Everybody has a chance to use them. When Scripture says that if your brother wants to borrow something from you, loan it to him. God gave it to you to begin with. A few years ago, I had an issue in my mind that I had a 16-foot car trailer, and I gave it away to an individual because he needed it. And then I needed it, and I didn't have access to it. And I thought, well, that was kind of dumb. Why did you give it away? Well, I'll just leave it in God's hands. And through another source, I had a gentleman sell me a 16-foot car trailer for $500. He provided the first one for me. The first one, when I bought it, cost me over $1,000. And yet, when I needed it, God said, okay, there's another one. God will provide anything we need. We're just raised in a society that is so self-centered. You know, you've got, it's yours, it belongs to you. Hold tightly to it. Don't dare let anybody steal it or use it and break it. Yeah, Scripture talks about that. If somebody borrows something and breaks it, they need to replace it. It's not that hard a concept, you know. But that doesn't mean that if a guy wants to borrow your shovel, you grab him the one that's about ready to break anyway, so that he has to give you a new one. That's an evil thought in your heart, not in theirs. God is able to give us whatever we need. And what we need is a simple life, a simple heart. We don't need to be naive. We don't need to be gullible. But we need to be open to others. Our possessions have a hold on us. And for us to truly be free, we have to ask again the question, what do we need to eliminate from our lives? What in our lives does Satan use to keep us in control and in slavery?
And then again, the word brother, and the word of prayer. Heavenly Father, again, we say thank you for your word, for Brother Dave. Thought, concept, scriptures that you got again for this message. Bless each one of us, Father, to endeavor to apply the things in our own lives that we hear. Help us not to be just hearers of the word, but doers of your word. And it's these things in Yahshua's name.